Hey, Mark, what up, man?
Dr. John.
What's up?
It's beautiful down here.
It is, man. It's the eating capital of planet Earth.
I know. I should be calling you about my eating and drinking, but I'm not ready to stop yet. So.
Yeah. Step one would be leave New Orleans. But hey, it's some of the greatest food I've ever had in my life, ever. So
got to fit on the plane to leave. That's the problem.
Well played there. All right. So what's up, brother? How can I help?
I am blessed to say that I had a beautiful daughter born 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, dude. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I know we'll dive into all the details, but to keep it quick and short up front, how do I go to sleep at night when I just can't get past worrying that she's not going to be awake when I get up in the morning?
Oh, man. Tell me about that.
It is crazy. I really, not to plug the book, but you talk about building a non-anxious life. And for a long time, I felt that I had, and I, lived without anxiety. And then something about her being born has triggered it. To layer on top of that, unfortunately, her mom has had to go back to the hospital a few times. Luckily, she's back home with us now, but there were a few nights there where, it was me with the baby without mom. And I just can't get, every time I lay down, for folks who don't have babies, when babies are breathing, sometimes it sounds like choking. Nobody told me that, but I just can't go to sleep. And I'm starting to, as it happens when you don't go to sleep, I'm starting to go crazy. So I need some help.
Well, the first step to getting some sleep is this: knowing that your body's working exactly as it should be. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not malfunctioning in any sort of way, okay? And I know that it almost sounds like it would be better if you were malfunctioning, because then you could fix the malfunction and then go on about your life. And the reality is your body's recognizing you've got a ton of new responsibility now, man. You got a baby girl. And you've never been married to a mom before. And you got a really quick, whoa, that mom had to go back to the hospital, right?
Right.
What was it? Was it blood pressure, bleeding? Why'd you have to go back?
It was the blood pressure, right?
Okay. So you got a ringside seat.
Twice. Sorry to cut you off. She had to go back, and then they let her out. And the day they let her out, I was in the hospital visiting with the baby, and I was thinking, seems too quick because we haven't gotten enough good labs back. But they said she can go, and she had to go back in. And then, so I think to your point, part of me isn't trusting that she's not going to have to go back any moment.
Of course. And I didn't experience that until years. So, sometime later after my first kid was born, that additional terrifying layer that, oh man, if something happens to my wife, I'm all alone. Right? That's extra terrifying. And if you're like me, we never babysat. Nobody trusts young boys with babysitting, right? And young boys often aren't drawn or steered in that direction. And so I didn't know how anything worked. I didn't even know the questions to ask to learn how things worked. Like, what's a baby sound like when they're breathing? How many times does a baby go to the bathroom during the day? How do you connect a diaper, which is basically built out of some engineer who builds skyscrapers developed the diaper, right? I didn't know how any of that stuff worked. And imagine yourself in any situation. They drop you in a car in the Formula One line, and everyone's revving their engine, and they're like, are you ready? You'd be anxious there too, right? And you'd be saying, I don't know how to drive. I don't know. What are we doing? How fast? I don't even know the rules. That's what just happened with you. Okay?
Yeah.
And so a lot of anxiety begins in a loop. You have a stressful situation, and you start thinking about that situation, and then you forecast the worst possible things about that situation. And then your mind is off to the races, and you get stuck in that loop over and over and over. And then you don't sleep, and then it makes the loop faster and louder, and then we're off and we're off and we're off. So let's short circuit that loop. Let's intentionally get out of that loop and exhale and say the words, my baby's going to be great. My baby's going to be safe. And I don't know what I'm doing. And so the fact that I now have this huge responsibility and I don't know how it all works Means my body's really sounding all the alarms it's got to try to get my attention, that we have a huge new responsibility. And you're like, all right, cool. And the thing about anxiety is once you get back in the driver's seat, it stops the alarms. It stops sounding the alarms so wildly. Okay? But it's about heading right into it. So let's be super direct and very precise. What are you most scared about right now?
During the day, it dissipates, but at night, I'm worried about her potentially being suffocated. And by the way, whoever named SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, is just the cruelest doctor of all time. But that is what I'm most terrified about.
Okay. Have you asked the doctor, or heaven forbid, even Googled what percentage of babies are? What's the number?
I have Googled every possible concern I've had, and that makes it more terrifying.
Yeah, stop doing that. Do you have a friend you can call who's a dad?
I'm the first in my friend group, but we're lucky to have incredibly close family. We have a big family, and there are folks I can call on. But this is one piece of it I should tell you too. So when the baby came out, I've having only seen it in movies, like you said, and not being around it.
Nothing like the movie.
No, it didn't. But what really triggered my stress response was I could tell something was slightly wrong with the baby because they had doctors like coming in, and the baby came out gray. And since then, like to your point, I've learned that this isn't a top flight emergency. But in the moment, I was asking the doctors, and they were saying everything's fine, while they were like handling the situation, but I could tell everything wasn't fine. And so even though intellectually I trust the doctors, I'm also at a point now where I'm kind of distrustful of everything, because in that moment I could tell, and I know why they were doing it, but I could tell they weren't being 100% honest with me. And it really freaked me out.
Hold on. They were being honest. There can be a problem and they have it all under control at the same time.
Right.
See what I'm saying? The challenge with anxiety is this. I think I've told this story before. I remember when I was over my head, man, or underwater with anxiety. I remember I had some beautiful mind map on how the economy was going to collapse again, and it was all string and tax, and I'd figured it all out. And I was sitting with a CFO of a $150 million company, and I walked through it, what I was going to do and why, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah, I don't know what's going on, man, but don't do that." And I walked out. I've got no finance background at all. I didn't manage a giant company or anything like that. And I remember thinking, this guy has no idea what's coming. And so the fear of the evil of anxiety is it tries to make you the god of your own domain. And that's why the antidote is often reaching out to other people. Because the one thing you're not an expert in? Prenatal care, baby deliveries, OBGYN stuff, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if a group of doctors, here's an alternative response that I had. I saw all the nurses and 3 doctors or whatever run and circle up my son too. I've been in enough crisis stuff. I knew something wasn't good. And I barged through. What's happening? And one nurse said, everything's fine. And I said, something's not fine. What's happening? And she said, your baby's fine. And then somebody turned and held up the umbilical cord. And it had a knot in it. The knot just wasn't cinched. And so if my son had swam a little bit more or kicked a little bit more, it would have cinched it and it would have suffocated him. And so what their stress was an almost. So I tell you to tell you, if they tell you everything's fine and things are going to be okay, then things are probably fine. They're going to be okay. And if they're not, you worrying about it isn't going to solve it. And so I always want you to go back and start writing these fears down, because by the way, the fears are going to move. I want you to have something by your bed that is anxieties about being a new dad. And I want you to write them down as they happen. The doctors are not telling me the truth. All right, I want you to then write down, is this true or not? Yes or no. If you believe no, you're not telling me the truth, then you as the daughter of this new baby need to look a doctor in the eye and say, I don't think I believe you. Tell me more. And a good doctor will. They'll sit down and know this is scary and terrifying and all that, and they will talk to you more. The third thing I want you to write down under each one of these anxieties and fears is this. What can I do about it? So if you ask a family member or a friend or somebody that you know, somebody from your church, a mentor, by the way, I'm always telling folks you need to have friends and community outside of work. I'll tell you, Jean-Noel Thompson, Dr. Thompson, one of my great mentors and friends, he's who I called when my wife went into labor, and he's who I called. He's got a bunch of kids, but he also was very thoughtful and could explain things to me. Hey, you're about to be nervous about this, don't. My friend Kevin, my friend Michael, my friend Slade, my friend John, these are guys that I worked with, and I called them because I didn't have a lot of men friends in my life with young kids, and they were a little bit older than me. But you got to find a couple of guys who've been down that road, and even if you have a couple of young moms who have been down that road to help coach you, okay? And I want you to get a routine for you. It's real easy that this little baby, it becomes your universe and your planet. I want you to get a routine for you. Exercise. One of you or your wife, has to sleep. I am totally 100% opposed to, if I'm awake, you got to be awake. That's insane. That's a recipe for both people in your house to be delirious. One of you needs to be sleeping when the other one's awake. That means sometimes she's got to pump so that you can feed it in the middle of the night and she can get some sleep, and vice versa. But those guys who just wake up and they're just sitting there bleary-eyed next to, that's a recipe for somebody to not have their head on straight inside the house. That's not safe and it's not smart, okay? Get a routine for you, get a routine for your wife. Begin asking your wife every day, how can I love you today? And you mentioned it, when you're at work, this stress and anxiety dissipates. Because you've got purpose. You're doing something. You're not just sitting there stewing and stewing and stewing and stewing. So ask your wife, how can I love you today? And begin to lean into those things. It'll give your body a chance to cycle through some of those stress hormones. And do the big things. Get your debts paid off. Don't take things personally. This baby will not care about you for a long time. Months. And that's okay. It's part of the process. Don't take it personally. When you can't get the baby to stop screaming or stop crying, that's part of having a baby, right? Continue to do the things a good man would do all the time. Head straight towards the anxiety, okay? Be honest about what you need. And if your wife is going through her own anxiety challenges, she is learning how to be a new mom. She's learning how to get her health back because her body's been scared her too. Then you're going to have to reach out to somebody. You may have been leaning on her for a long time. You have to reach out to other people. You're going to have to connect with folks and say, all right, the most masculine thing I can do in this moment right now as a new dad of a beautiful, safe, wonderful new daughter is ask somebody for help, to reach out. And by the way, raising a daughter's scary, man. Raising a son is too, but for me, it was a different experience. And I don't know why. I wish I was elevated and above all of that. And I wish I was just, it's all the same. It wasn't for me. And it's probably not for you. Raising a daughter was scary. It is scary for me. And I know enough to know that running from that fear is the worst, least fatherly thing I can do. My job is to head into that fear and be honest about it. You're going to be a great dad, man. You're going to be a great dad. Stay on the line. I'm going to send you a copy of Building an Unanxious Life. That's my gift to you. I'm also going to send you all of the couples questions for humans decks because I want you and your wife to practice staying connected during this time so y'all don't end up on two separate planets. Every time you feel uncomfortable, anxious, stressed, nervous about a thing, I want you to write it down. Write it down. And then ask yourself, is this true? And then ask yourself, what can I do about that right now? Stop Googling stuff. And by the way, chances are, big time chances are, that sweet baby girl of yours is going to grow up to live a long, amazing life. She's lucky to have you as a dad.